The high specification continues on the inside, as you'd expect in a car of this price. There's Connolly leather, a good Recaro seat, good instrumentation, and excellent ventilation. Also, the steering wheel adjustment includes the binnacle moving with it. One thing I don't like, however, is the rather offset pedals and a brake that needs a servo. The interesting thing about the engine installation is that it's back to front. Radiator at the rear, then engine, with gearbox in front of it. That radiator being fed through the loops in the top of the body. While we started the day driving a coupe, it takes no time at all for the detachable roof panels to be removed and packed away under the bonnet in special storage bags, that leaves little room for luggage. The Cirrus takes on another shape, and the joys of open-air motoring beckon. Joys that are spoiled only by a balky gear change that fights against getting reversed when you need it, and those brakes that do little to inspire confidence. But having said that, it is an indulgence, but a rather nice one.
Since last week, when we asked viewers to send in their ideas for improving vehicle security, we've been absolutely inundated with all kinds of weird and wonderful inventions. But Renault, who have just announced that all of their high-performance cars, including this brand-new cabriolet, are soon to be fitted with an engine inhibitor system, say that the solution to the problem isn't that easy. It seems that in each of the different EEC countries, there are different laws about burglar alarms. Some say you can use the hazard warning lights, some say you can use a siren, some say you can use the horn. It's chaos.
As European manufacturer, what we need really, it's a common rule applicable in all the European countries. That's the key for us to be very efficient on that subject.
The Space Wagon has been a familiar sight on our roads for some years now, and this year Mitsubishi have updated it. And they've also invented a little brother for the wagon. It's called the Space Runner, and I've been out driving it. It's about a foot shorter than the Space Wagon, and its great adaptability should appeal especially both to the second car family and to the small businessman. It's got a single sliding door on the curb side only, which is a good safety feature if you're doing the school run. The seats not only split and fold in the usual manner, but they're also easy to remove altogether when there's a large load to carry. The tailgate is light and it doesn't fly up too high, and that can be a problem for some people. The sill is quite wide and it's reasonably low for easy loading, and the boot is wide and flat. In fact, you can get 2 or 3 mountain bikes in here once the back seats are removed. The nice high driving position allows the driver, whatever height, to see over other vehicles. Handy in town traffic, and it's nippy too. The instrument panel is red on white, meant to be the best colour combination to read under urban streetlights. I liked it. In fact, the whole interior look matches the feel of the Space Runner, fresh and light. It's surprisingly easy to drive and manoeuvre, which, along with good visibility, means parking's a doddle.
Back at the turn of the century, there was no environment. Well, there was, but it smelt of horses. Of course, this changed all that. This is the 1886 Benz Trike. Well, actually, it's a superb replica of it, but it's widely acclaimed to be the world's first internally combustion engined vehicle. Being a car fan, of course, I owe it a great debt of gratitude. If you think about it, it only took man 70 years to get from his first flight to walking on the moon. Progress in the world of cars has been a deal more pedestrian. I mean, this was where we were at in 1886, but by 1966, we'd only got here. Mind you, in my humble opinion, that's as far as we ever got, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the best car ever made. It's the Ferrari 330 GTS. 2 previous owners, one of only 2 right-hand drive cars that ever came to Britain, and it's yours for £195,000. It's yours when the recession ends for rather a lot more.
Motorfair is on till next Sunday. Now, if you can't make it along here, you have the chance to win 5 of the new cars on display in our Motorfair competition. Details are in Radio Times, on sale this week. All you have to do is match what you think are the right cars for 3 characters from current television programs. Mike Hardy from Trainer, Hyacinth from Keeping Up Appearances, and Adrian Boswell from Bread. 2 remaining clues in next week's programme. Now, for those of you who are able to get to Motorfair, next Tuesday is Motorsport Day. That's when a lot of the cars on the stands will be changed for race and rally models, including a car from world sports car champions Jaguar. There'll be a lot of top-name drivers here too, including our own Tiffany Dell and Tony Mason to sign autographs. But you don't have to wait till next Tuesday to meet Tony. He's here right now.
Donington Park Circuit in the middle of September, and young David Coulthard of Dumfries prepares for round 14 of the British Formula 3 Championship. It's the perfect showcase for the talent that will produce many of tomorrow's Formula 1 stars. With a 10-point lead and only 3 rounds left, he has a strong chance of winning the championship.
David's assisted in his racing by a fellow Scot called Stewart. Not the one you're probably thinking of, 3-time world champion Jackie Stewart, but his son Paul.
It's an ambitious business, Paul Stewart Racing, attempting a rare endeavour. It operates simultaneously at 3 different levels of single-seater racing.
Last year, David Coulthard raced in the team's GM Lotus. Now he's taken over the seat that his boss Paul Stewart occupied last year, because Paul's now moved on to Formula 3000.
The progression from one formula to the next forms part of a master plan dreamt up by Jackie Stewart.
I saw the long-term factor as being able to build talent, not only just racing drivers, but create a building platform for some of the people involved. As a driver's platform, I think the staircase of talent concept that I thought was right to have, using the lower formula coming out of Formula Ford or even of karting into the GM Lotus formula, which is the European Championship, to go then into Formula 3 was an absolutely natural growth.
Jackie was at Brands Hatch to watch Paul practising for the next rung of the ladder, the British round of the European Formula 3000 Championship. As well as driving, Paul is also chairman of the whole £3 million operation in preference to his father.
I think Jackie Stewart is the past to a large extent. I mean, my history in motor racing clearly is recognised by a lot of people. But I think if we're thinking in the future and in the longer term, then I think it's much more appropriate to have Paul Stewart racing. I think it's much better that it's his name above the door than mine.
This has been a tough year for Paul. It's a big step up in power from Formula 3. The season takes in a lot of new circuits, and like other top contenders, the team chose the wrong car. Last year, the Lolas were dominant. This year, they haven't won a race. And like fellow Britons Alan McNish and Damon Hill, Paul has found it tough.
We've been struggling with this car this year. It's been a common problem with the Lola amongst the other teams, and Lola acknowledged that as well.
With the F3000 team in Britain for once, David Coulthard was on hand to listen and learn about the formula he'd hoped to graduate to next year.
Today is a perfect opportunity for me to come and have a look at Formula 3000. I can come along and see how the guys work and what it takes to be one of these drivers.
How involved do you get on a test day like this?
Yeah, well, always I try and keep out of the road of their normal working, but when the team manager or one of the engineers isn't busy, then I can have a chat, just ask them what they're doing, ask, to talk to the drivers, see what feelings they have, and in general it just gives me a feel for this formula. So if I move up to it next year, I'm not totally new. I already know how the team works and what's involved in a test day.
Moving on next year depends on success in Formula 3, and his big rival at the moment is Brazilian Gilles de Ferran. Now last year they were teammates in the Paul Stewart GM Lotuses, so why did he move on?
In the beginning of the year, Paul Stewart Racing was looking for a sponsorship. I was looking for a sponsorship as well. And he came to a time just before the beginning of the season where we sat down together, and we just couldn't raise enough funding for the whole operation.
It's a harsh reality in motor racing that drivers usually need to bring pocketfuls of cash to secure a ride. And for British hopefuls, it's ironic to see foreigners apparently so much better supported by industry back home. It's a constant source of irritation to Jackie Stewart.
There's a complete avalanche of Brazilian talent at the present time, for example, in Formula 3 and in many other formulas of the sport. That's because Brazilian industry and Italian industry and French business sectors have supported those young developing drivers, and those countries have benefited enormously. Britain, unfortunately, has been very asleep on this.
Motor racing has always been expensive, and in a recession, sponsors are doubly hard to find, even with the Stewart name to sell. And when they're found, they must be properly looked after, by David Coulthard before the race and by Paul Stewart. at Donington wearing his chairman's hat rather than his driving helmet.
It's important that I do concentrate my racing for the sake of the team as well, so the engineers and the mechanics and team manager know that when I'm plugged in with my helmet on, that I'm not busy thinking about another business deal or discussing something with my father about something else. It's important that I really program and think about the driving. So we've got good people that deal with things on a day-to-day basis, so it allows me to function the way I need to.
On this occasion, Paul Stewart's sponsors were to be disappointed.
Barrichello's normally a poor starter, but he's got a flyer today.
For once, it was David Coulthard who fluffed his start from the front row and he slipped to 5th. It looked as if the championship was slipping away. But Jackie Stewart still had faith in his ability.
What he is very good at is, for such a young boy who's only 20 years of age, his mental attitude is very good. He's very anxious to learn. He wants to listen a lot. And I think that's one of his strengths. He's very mature for his years.
If a Briton wasn't destined to win the British Formula 3 Championship, it was only what the odds predicted. David Coulthard and Steve Robertson were the only Brits competing against the French, Japanese, Italians and 6 Brazilians. For Jackie Stewart, the failure lies with British industry.
I contact, and I'm in daily contact with many of the barons of British industry. Frankly, there's always an excuse why they shouldn't be doing it, rather than actually getting things done. Brazil is not well off in this world today, and yet it's supporting some of the best young talent that the world has ever seen. And it proves that they're bringing home the goods because they're winning world championships, whether it be Senna today or Piquet yesterday or Emerson Fittipaldi before him. There has to be an example in British industry to bring young British drivers along.
David was to finish a challenging 4th, but they were the last points he was to score, retiring in both the remaining rounds. It left him 2nd in the championship, and with Paul Stewart racing, probably able to progress to F3000. But the future for other British drivers is not so promising.
Right now, there is no replacement for Nigel Mansell that I can see in the horizon. David Coulthard's one of the very few. Alan McNish, another one of the very few that people are perceiving as being filling the role that Nigel Mansell, James Hunt, Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark, Graham Hill filled in the past. British industry are not really playing a big part in that. It's not the taxpayers I want the money from. It's not the government we want the money from. It's industry, because there is much advantage to be taken through the arena of motorsport, which after all is a global example of product, of exports, of identity, of corporate image, etc.
So, Nicky, what was your favourite in there?
Well, a bit conventional, I'm afraid, but to drive away in something red and Italian, Ferrari 348.
Go on, Chris, what about you?
I don't think you can beat the 1938 Citroën Light 15 Roadster. It's immaculate. I'd give my eye teeth for it. What about you?
Well, my favourite wasn't even on show. My favourite is that. Now, this may look like a 1950s Cooper F1 car, but it's got a 1000cc bike engine back here. It's got a bike gearbox, and it goes like a bike. There's no wonder they call it the Rocket. Now, how does 0 to 60 in 4 seconds and a top speed of 150 miles an hour grab you? And it's all street legal.
Do you want to lift, Nicky?
Go on, get in. Pull my seat over.
Com and glove. Perfect, right.
Well, I don't know, very exciting, but a bit impractical. Don't forget, I'm back here on Sunday with Noel Edmonds, BBC One, 5:10. See you then. In next week's programme, Peugeot redefines the small family car. Quentin Wilson offers advice on how to buy a second-hand BMW 5 Series. And how to go fast legally when the speed limit's only 40 miles an hour.